Good evening, everybody. Wednesday, November 4th at 7 o'clock. This is our village manager selection meeting. Roseanne, do you want to call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Halpin,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kennedy. I think you are muted.
You're muted, Dan, Mac.
I'm here.
Okay.
Commissioner Ross,
I'm here.
Commissioner Samaria,
Here.
Commissioner Tudor.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Samaria, would you like to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
Okay.
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hoorah.
Okay, I'd like to open it up to public comments. Is there any public comments?
Madam Mayor,
Yes?
I'd just like to congratulate Art Gonzalez to be on a commission, and I'd like to congratulate Matt Kennedy for his reelection. And I don't see Judy. If she's here, then I'd like to congratulate her.
She's there. She's there.
Okay. I'd like to congratulate her on their win. Thank you.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Fred Jonas wants to speak, maybe?
Yeah, Fred Jonas, 918 119th Street. I said this before, and I just want to say it again. I'd like you to think carefully about this. I really wish that the commission would abandon this meeting tonight. You are getting ready to interview manager applicants. We have so badly botched this whole procedure that we have lost an important number of some of our most highly regarded applicants. And I think we are doing the village a great disservice if we pretend that the applicants we have left, who were never the most favored ones from the beginning, are good enough. And I realize that we really only need one manager. And if we have 5 applicants, we could say, well, then it's fine. We have 5 times as many choices as we needed, but we didn't start out this way. We started out with 28, we reduced to 10. We lost 5 of them because we simply mismanaged the project. And I really think you should stop it here and start it over again so that we have a proper group of manager applicants who will be highly thought of by the people who have to make this decision, not just the leftovers.
Any other comments?
Yes, Janie Anderson.
You're muted, Janie.
I am
I'm
muted.
muted, yeah.
Janie Anderson, 11th place and 119th Street. I have to say, I never thought I'd see you this evening. I'm glad we're finally here. I'm glad you're finally moving forward. I gotta disagree with Fred on this one. The best manager this city ever had was hired in a year where there were only 4, possibly 5, but I seem to remember only 4 finalists. So all it takes is 1. The other thing I would have liked to have seen, though, is the resumes should have been online. I mean, we really shouldn't have to bother the clerk, and the public should have been able to read at least the finalist resumes. If there's any way to get them online tomorrow, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Chuck Ross, you are muted, sir.
Evening, Chuck Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. I also want to congratulate Mac, Art, and Judy. Job well done. And I have a lot of hope that this will be a good commission going forward. I disagree with Fred. I'm sorry, Fred. But I think that we need to move forward with this process as soon as possible. And hopefully out of the, I think there are 4 left now, out of the 4 candidates that are left, let's see what we can find. And, you know, if it doesn't work out, then we can always scrap the process and start all over again. But let's continue to move forward with the process as it exists. Thank you.
Thank you. Bobby Anderson. You're
Okay,
unmuted, sir.
thank you. Bob Anderson, 119 Northeast 11th Place. One of the things, let me ask the mayor and the commission. We have two newly elected, they haven't been sworn in yet, two new elected commissioners. I think it's very important that they should be able to participate in asking questions. I understand they can't vote yet, but to be able to at least ask the questions, give them time, give them some special time to be asking questions that the rest of the commissioners are asking, because these two are going
I'm on the
to be.
Zoom. If I want to hear them talking, where do I click the?
It's
I don't know what
silent,
that.
sorry.
Okay, but I think it's important that these two newly elected people have a say-so in who is going to be hired,
Value.
and interviewing these people, because whomever is hired are going to be working with these two newly elected individuals. And I think it's very important. Go ahead, let them have a say-so and to be asking some questions of the candidates. Thank you.
You.
Is there any other?
I don't see
Comment?
anybody else. I don't see anybody else, me.
Okay, we'll close. No. No, there's no other. We'll close public comments.
Can I enter the candidate, Mayor?
Yes.
I actually, if I may, before we start to bring the first candidate in, I have a couple of requests, Ginny. And I'll say them now, and if you want me to bring them back up later, I will. But at the end, I would like to ask each candidate that we talk to do a little assignment for us, a little recap for us. And I talked to the attorneys today, and they said that if I want to request that is something that the entire commission has to approve. So it's something that I do when I interview people. So I'd like to discuss that with you guys, and if you'll approve it, if three of us will approve it, then I'd like to be able to ask that question at the end of each open discussion.
What's the question?
May I? When I interview people, I give them an assignment at the end of an interview, especially people for a senior level position. And what I ask them to do is to provide the next day, within 24 hours, a recap of the interview, because I find value in seeing how someone recaps the same interview that I attended. Typically, they're taking notes and they're writing down the questions and the things they discussed, and often they come with questions as well, and we're not doing that tonight, I don't think. But I find it to be of great value to see how someone recaps an interview that I attended with them, so I can compare notes, what they found to be important compared to what I found to be important. It also is a good assignment to give someone to see how well they follow up and their attention to detail, getting things done on time. I have found it to be a very valuable thing. So it's typically how I end an interview. And sometimes I'm surprised that people don't do it after they say they will, or they forget what the deadline was to get it to me. And then often I'm very impressed with the quality of the package that they send back to me, and I find great value in that. So that's something that I would like to ask them to do, but I need to get the commission's approval for us to do that.
If we approve it, which I'll ask the other commissioners in a second, the package would go to the clerk, not to you.
It would go to the clerk, that's correct. It would go to Roseanne, and she would disseminate it to all of us, and it would become part of public record, and the public would have access to see that as well.
Okay, Commissioner Samaria, do you have an opinion on that? Okay, Commissioner Tudor, do you have an opinion?
What he said.
I understand the concept. I don't know if it's really necessary, but it's whatever the majority of the commission wants to do.
Commissioner Ross, do you have an opinion on that?
I think it sounds like an excellent idea for them to come back with like the takeaways of the meeting. And it's a good exercise for us to see how well they can summarize and sort of make action points out of our discussion. I'm not sure 24 hours is enough. I might give them 48 hours to come back with something. And yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Commissioner Kennedy, you can do that.
Okay, would you like me to read exactly what I will read to each of them so you guys can hear it? I wrote
Okay.
something down. I'll be happy to read it to you now. Here's what I wrote down. May I give you an assignment as follow-up to this interview? Tomorrow, before you have the benefit of watching a video of this meeting, please send a recap to the village clerk, what we discussed, any topics left unanswered, things that you would like to clarify in your choice of format. We'd like to compare your notes with ours. Send that to Roseanne and she'll share it with the full commission and make it part of public record of this process. Thank you.
Okay.
And then that way it leaves it pretty wide open to whatever they think is relevant. And that also indicates something to us.
Well, I'm sure they'll question as to how big you want this so that we understand it should be a small synopsis of our meeting.
Whatever they think. I think we don't give them too much guidance on this. I think that is how we learn something about them as well. We kind of leave it that basic. If someone responds with a PowerPoint presentation and someone else puts it in the body of the email, that's their choice.
Okay, Roseanne,
it also tells us how serious. Oh, I have something else, Ginny. I would like to ask for a special call meeting on Friday. We're going to do these interviews tonight. We have 2 tonight. We have 2 Thursday night. I would like to ask for a special call meeting for Friday, which is why I wanted to get these things back by the end of Friday, to discuss these applicants, because we won't be discussing them. And I think we need to discuss pretty quickly, now that we'll have met the 4 of them, what we think our next steps are. Are there people we're interested in? And because we've never discussed what the next step will be after this. All we agreed to was these interviews.
If we hold a meeting Friday, I would assume that it's for the selection of the manager, not to discuss it more.
Well, we never agreed that we would select someone after one interview. So again, we have not discussed anything beyond what we're doing tonight. I think that needs to be discussed. And I think we need to have a special call meeting to do it, because tonight we're just conducting 2 interviews. Tomorrow we're conducting 2 interviews, but we've never discussed what comes after this. And that's what we need to determine: the process, the next steps, discuss the candidates, and decide what we're going to do. And at that meeting on Friday, I would also like us to have a conversation about solid waste. The public may not know, but we got a response from Waste Pro to our request for an extension. And I'm not certain if it's appropriate for me to say what the content of that email was, but they did reply to us, and we are kind of under the gun here to make some decisions about solid waste. And I don't think we can waste another day on that, quite frankly. We're currently living in an extension till the end of December. So if we're going to have a special call meeting on Friday to discuss this process, I think we need to have a conversation about solid waste as well.
Commissioner Samaria?
You have to unmute yourself.
Can't hear you.
No, that's my fault. Madam Mayor, I think that should be discussed at a regular commission meeting. This is coming up this is a special commission meeting. It's only supposed to be items that are on the agenda. And I think that we have time. We have until the end of December to decide on that. So I'd like to have that when they have the regular commission meeting come in with the new commissioners.
I agree with that. Do you have an opinion, Commissioner Tudor?
I think we could, I believe that the Waste Pro waste services issue can be handled at the next November commission meeting. I don't know if there's really a need to have it this Friday.
Okay, Commissioner Ross?
The question of Waste Pro is important, and we do need to move on it. But I think that could be handled on the 17th with the new commission. And the other issue of the manager next steps, that is something more pressing, because we have people, in suspense waiting to hear what we're going to do next.
Correct. Okay.
So
we will not have, we didn't decide yet on Friday's meeting. I think we should decide tomorrow after we interview the other 2 candidates if we're going to call another meeting for Friday.
Excuse me, Mayor, but I think that may not give us enough time to notice the meeting, from Thursday to Friday. So we probably should decide now if you want to take a vote.
Ed, is there enough time?
I think the The rules call for a 24-hour notice.
Okay,
So that would not be enough time.
so we would have to decide tonight.
You can always schedule it and then cancel it.
Madam Mayor, Commissioner Ross, were you still for that you wanted? I think you agreed with me about meeting, if let's say if we have the top three, because I think that's what we discussed at the last commission meeting, to have the top three meet in person, that you wanted to see them in person. I remember we talked about that at the last commission meeting.
I think it was Commissioner Kennedy that felt there was a value to meeting someone face to face. I did not have an opinion on that.
Oh, okay.
Mayor Hoppin also.
Okay, we'll schedule a
Well,
meeting.
the bottom line is, go ahead.
We'll schedule a meeting for Friday at 7 o'clock for the purpose of discussing the manager candidates. Would you, Roseanne, let our candidates in from the waiting room?
I have a procedural question. Roseanne, when we interview these folks, can you spotlight them on Zoom, please, so they show up at the top so we can see them while they're talking?
I honestly don't know how to move but when they start talking, they probably Zoom moves them to near, right? Yeah,
It does, and it highlights them in yellow. It borders them in yellow, but I think if you go to their profile, the three dots where they are, and click on Spotlight, it puts them in the top position.
Okay.
At
All right.
least it does on my Zoom account.
Okay.
You had something to say, Commissioner Ross?
Yeah. Is it possible to move Friday's meeting a little earlier, 6:30?
I don't have a problem with that.
I'm fine with that.
The problem with you, Commissioner Tudor?
No, the 6:30 wouldn't be a problem. I just need to confirm that I am available on Friday evening. I'm going to let Roseanne know tomorrow about that.
Oh, okay. So Friday is set unless Commissioner Tudor can't make it, and then we will make it for Monday. Okay, now you can let them in.
All right. I'm going to let only one, Mario Diaz.
One at a time, okay. Mario Diaz will be the first applicant. And, okay.
That's perfect.
Hello.
Thank you.
So just so you know, you're very large on our screens, okay?
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Would you like to give your presentation?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mayor. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, and residents. It is a pleasure to meet you, at least virtually for now, and thank you for the opportunity to be here with you. I have written some thoughts down to be as concise as possible, as I know we do have a limited time. So I'll start my comments. I'm humbled and honored to be here before you tonight interviewing for the village manager position. To understand my vision and management style, I think it's important to introduce who I am as a person. I believe that understanding a person's character will provide a great insight into the type of leader they will be for. My father, mother, and older brother instilled three key components while growing up that I still hold true. They are my true north, as some will say. Those characteristics are faith, family, and service for others. For me, these principles provide a glimpse of the management styles that I regularly utilize, which is servant leadership. I try to leave a lasting legacy that improves our communities and daily lives. Throughout my career, regardless of being a team member or a team leader, the goal is always to do our best to bring efficient and effective services to our community. In all aspects of my life, I try to be a servant leader, willing to do the necessary job, not just the ones that I like to do. With being in close proximity to Biscayne Park, I've had the pleasure over the past 3 months to drive and walk the streets of the village multiple times. I've spoken to dozens of residents each time, asking them what they like and what can be improved upon within the village. I took this opportunity not only to meet our residents and visitors, but to just listen to what they had to say. So many of them love the small, quiet neighborhood that is Biscayne Park. They are happy with the job that Chief Cabrera has done and feel safe walking around the neighborhood, not only during the day, but especially at night. They are happy. They did bring up a couple concerns, however. A couple shared with me the flooding concerns, particularly on streets on 113th near 10th Avenue, and the new threat to the quality of our life, which is the Metroplex plan by the FAA. I believe that my 15 years of government experience has really positioned me to be the best candidate for the village of Biscayne Park. During my career, I have made many state, county, and municipal connections with various elected officials and staff members at all levels of government. For example, during my time at the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority, I came to know FDOT District Secretary Jim Wolf, as MDX is a government agency that partners in the transportation industry with FDOT. I was able to work alongside him and many professionals at DOT, and I understand the processes for their projects and what they look for and how to accomplish the goals that they have. When I arrived at North Bay Village, I reached out to the secretary and explained to him that the community had growing concerns that 79th Street Causeway was becoming more like a highway instead of a community throughway. After meeting with Secretary Wolf and his traffic engineers, the village and DOT started working together over the course of a year. Once DOT fully understood the concerns and understood the vision that the village had for the causeway, FDOT became open to the idea of turning the causeway into a village, into a complete street. And we are just getting underway with those studies and that process now. For Biscayne Park, I think I would follow a similar approach with DOT to obtain the best possible outcome for the 6th Avenue project. I know there's still a lot of varying opinions and wants, and there's still a lot of steps that we would need to go through as a community together. But I think once we have a clear vision, approaching DOT and getting them to get on board with whatever the ultimate goal is of the village would be attainable. I also took the time to view several months of the village meetings. I understand there are other topics of interest, such as the solid waste collection. This is not a position that is unique to Biscayne Park. Currently at North Bay Village, I'm evaluating the next steps to compare in-house services to the benefits of outsourcing these services. I have spoken on the matter with several municipalities within the area and have gone through the transition successfully. Currently, Key Biscayne has an RFP out and where they're asking each of the vendors to price out both curbside automated service and side yard services. I believe that for Biscayne Park, we can analyze these bids and the solicitation to either emulate the solicitation or even piggyback on the contract if it's the will of the village. I believe that in all these projects, there are solutions that can bring a superior quality of service and life to our residents. As manager, I will work diligently to obtain these results alongside you, staff, and the residents of Biscayne Park. A keen interest that I do have as your village manager is the administration of the budget, how it is prepared and presented to our residents. I believe that all levels of government should have as transparent information as possible. Recently, I worked on establishing a financial transparency portal for the North Bay Village website. For Biscayne Park, I believe we should explore those same options with Paul Winklejohn from GMS. Regarding the budget process, I do have a vision for it. I envision a process in which a resident satisfactory survey is done on a yearly basis. This will provide a yearly baseline and get the pulse of the community year over year. We would then obtain those results and hold a commission and staff executive session to prioritize the expenses and go over what the surveys said from our community. Projects and long-term visions of the commission would be worked out, where staff can then start focusing on those goals with clear direction. The next step would be to hold a public workshop with the residents to review the process that we have taken to date, listen to their feedback, suggestions, and concerns. Staff would then again make those adjustments as needed and present the proposed budget to the commission in another workshop. Once we obtain your feedback and we understand where we have both the residents and the commission's will, we can then make those adjustments in time for the first of 2 required public hearings. All in all, this process takes several months. It's not something that you do within the last 30 days before the budget season. I would probably begin this process as early as January to make sure that we have sufficient time for everything and we are able to address all of their concerns. As I mentioned earlier, a transparent and open government should be the main staple of all government functions. In order to accomplish this, I would also increase the level and quality of communications within the village. I understand that in the current budget, there are some funds set aside for re-imaging of the website. That is a project that I have done multiple times throughout my career. Recently, I've even helped design and manage and guided the communications coordinator to complete the project for North Bay Village, which we also included midway through the project. We included a new app, a phone app for the village. I believe it's important to have regular contact as well with the residents. And in Biscayne Park, the coziness of the village affords this. It makes it easier for us to be in contact with residents. So I would work with Chief Cabrera to reestablish a coffee with the cop type event and some other type of event where I would either walk or ride a bike throughout the village and invite not only you, the commission, but also the residents to join me so that we can talk, we can see areas that need improvement and talk about the next steps. Constant flow of communication and a constant touch point with our residents is important. And it's what makes everyone's quality of life better because they now start to see and identify what those outcomes are. The last example that I want to share with you is that sets me apart from the other candidates, I think, is the various policy work that I have done over my years. Recently at North Bay Village, they were plagued with party houses being caused by short-term vacation rentals. So I researched and I recommended to the commission, who ultimately adopted the strengthening of licensing for these properties. We reduced the number of occupants, and increased the various fines. At one point, they were only $500 per violation. We increased it up to $200 or $2,000 per violation. And should we have repeated offenders, not only could we suspend and revoke their license to operate, but the fines can increase up to $5,000 per infraction. These efforts directly resulted into a reduction in the number of complaints that staff received about short-term vacation rentals. It brought back the quality of life to those surrounding properties so that they can have their homes. That also allowed staff to focus on valuable and use the valuable resources and limited resources that we have on other important tasks. So as I mentioned, I believe my experience and vision for the village makes me the best candidate for you, not just now, but for years to come. I thank you again for affording me this opportunity to present to you tonight, and I look forward to answering any and all of your questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz.
I'd like to ask you a curiosity question. How did you select which residents that you spoke to? Did you just bump into them in the street?
I did. I primarily focused my area, although I walked around many of the streets to get a good grasp of the overall community, but there was a large focus around the park. And so the park became a very easy interaction for me to have with the residents. I would simply approach someone still maintaining about 6 to 10 feet apart with my mask, and I would ask, excuse me, if you have a moment, can I speak with you? Many times everybody was very friendly and said yes. And I would just simply ask, what are the things that you like about living in Biscayne Park? And what are some of the things that you can improve? And they were so willing to talk. A lot of times residents had to really think about what they didn't like, which is a great sign. I think there's a lot of opportunity to continue to improve the community, but to have an understanding from our residents that they enjoy the area that they live in and they understand what makes Biscayne Park such a jewel. It's that close-knit community that you always hope to live in. So with that, it was very easy to talk to residents.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Samaria, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Mr. Diaz, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner, for having me.
So I'm going to be asking you some questions. What attracted you to Biscayne Park, and why do you think you would like to be the village manager?
The first time I heard of the position, I was on a conference call with the other city managers throughout the county, discussing various actions that we had and were taking with regards to the COVID pandemic. I believe your interim manager, Ms. Prado, mentioned that they were going to begin the process. That's when I started to look into the village. I wanted to see exactly what it meant to be successful at Biscayne Park. And I think that my experience and my ability to navigate and look at an issue or a problem and identify a path forward to have that resolved, that became very intriguing to me. I think it's an opportunity that I would love to tackle for you.
Thank you. We do not have a lot of employees, but that means it is more important to hire the right people. How much experience have you had with Public Works Department? At this time, we need a Public Works manager.
Thank you for that question. I think that's an excellent question. I love to say that I'm a jack of all trades, because it's not just one singular job that just catches my interest. I like to see and be a part of an overall solution. And so what experience do I have with Public Works? My very first job out of college was as the community liaison for a private firm in Fort Lauderdale. I was doing all the updates they were converting from septic tank to sewers and new water lines. And so in some of those areas, you had ditches over 25 feet deep when they were installing those type of lines. So I was the go-between, because they were having difficulties not only explaining what the project and the impact of construction would be to the residents, but then having the engineers kind of have that translation from the technical jargon into a layman's term. So I began to learn a lot of that understanding. I learned how to read construction plans, how to mark them up, what they look like. I carried that over to the next position in my career, which is the public information officer for the Miami-Dade Expressway Authority. They built highways, they built construction, and they touched every community within this neighborhood, within this county. And so the lasting impacts that they had were very big, and everything was very thoughtful and a very meticulous process. And so I was able to learn that process, and again, being able to translate what type of impacts that would have onto a community. Because one thing is to say, we're going to reinstall all new water lines and water meters in a community. Okay, but what does that mean? Well, that probably means it could be for a week, you won't be able to drive into your neighborhood because we have open trenches. Oh, okay, wait a minute, that's not what I understood. So being able to understand those impacts and those consequences and move forward and then plan accordingly so that we can do that. In my career, it's not only looking at those construction aspects, but then being able the same day to jump onto what are we doing for budget? How are we going to get this paid? How are we going to plan for it? Then after that conversation, jumping into, we now need to talk about contract services. How are we going to solicit for the work? How are we going to move forward? So it is constantly looking and moving the entire agenda forward, but understand it's not just one path or one item that needs to move forward. It is a constant moving and maneuvering through many different fields.
Good. Biscayne Park is a small community, and sometimes it is like dealing with a big family and does not always get along. What strategies would you use to bring the administration, commission, and residents together so we can accomplish goals?
You know, as I mentioned earlier, I think the most important thing is communication, is being able to clearly identify and define what the vision is for the village. It's why I want to take that process during the budgeting process forward. I want for you as a commission to have a very good understanding of what our neighborhoods and our residents want. It's one thing, and sometimes people get a little shy with who they're talking to, but when you're able to answer questions and you're able to then extrapolate the data over the entire population and be able to say, you know what, we always thought that they didn't want this in the community, but 80% of the people on the survey saying, yeah, this is what they want. So it's able to kind of align us. And once we're able to all work together and understand what the goals of the communities are and what your vision for that is, then it's the job of staff to be able to implement your vision for that. The more that we talk and the more that we're able to communicate together, the easier I think the process becomes. And in that, I would immediately, upon my first day, ask to meet and sit with each and every one of the commission to hear what that vision is and continue that dialogue moving forward. It's not, okay, I only spoke to you prior to the agenda. I want to be in constant contact with all of you so that I understand what your concerns are and how we can continue to move forward while still looking at what the main picture is for the village.
Even though we have different department heads, what do you think your level of involvement should be with all departments, for example, police, public works, and code? How would you describe the methods of management? Do you believe in micromanaging approach or let the department heads do the job which they were hired for?
Commissioner Samara, that's a great question. And I think it's very important because it talks to the type of person that will be leading your administrations. I think the village manager needs to be a leader. And I utilize a servant leadership. In other words, when the job has to get done, whether it is going to clean the bathrooms or if it's going to fill sandbags or if it's analyzing what the appropriate budget steps will be, then that's what a leader needs to do. But if we are thankful to have professionals within our services, then I expect our professionals to perform to the level and for the duties that they were hired. I expect them to be able to be analytical and to recommend solutions to problems. And then I expect them to implement that. And when they don't, then that is a conversation that I need to have to bring that level of service up to where we need it. And to coach, I don't believe in micromanaging. As a manager, I won't have time to micromanage. I have to trust that my staff can complete the task that they are given. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be completely hands-off. I need to also understand what those processes are to make sure that we're not just going off track, because then we just fail, and failure is not an option.
Getting information out to the residents has been an ongoing issue. What suggestions might you have to keep residents informed? Our previous interim manager had a weekly video that he used to keep residents informed. Would you follow that or come up with your own ideas?
So my undergraduate degree is in communications, specifically in a public relations department. And a good portion of my career has been with communications with residents and the community. And so I would tell you I would need to see what works for Biscayne Park. Many times everybody wants to be on Facebook and social media and Instagram and all these things, but just having them only dilutes a certain message. And it also doesn't mean that that's where your audience is. If your audience is very popular on Nextdoor or on Instagram or on LinkedIn, then we need to go where that audience is. I do believe we need to have regular communication, not only a weekly video, although I think that is great opportunity because then you personalize who staff or the commission is with the residents. There's something they're able to constantly see. But I think you need to look at different touch points in order to really reach out to the residents and impact, because not everybody obtains the information the same way.
What do you think Biscayne Park's biggest assets are, and what are some of the areas that need to improve?
Some of the biggest assets, first and foremost, your residents. Like I mentioned, they are extremely friendly. They're always willing to talk to you, and I believe that would carry over in always wanting to do good for the community and go that extra mile for the community. I was reviewing your budget and the last audited budget in the Florida Auditor's website, and in 2019 you had an unassigned fund balance of 37% and an assigned fund balance of approximately 2.9, so about 40%. That, although dollar-wise is lower than what bigger communities will have, but that kind of percentage is very healthy, especially now when we're facing the COVID pandemic, where we're anticipating that the biggest impacts to our property values will be now in 2021 and 2022. So having a healthy reserve, I think, is very, very good. When you start looking at some of the areas that we need to improve on, flood areas, there are some streets that, according to some of the residents, need to be addressed. Looking at through some of your community meetings, I think overall organizational leadership is also very important, so that we can continue to move the items and the business of the village forward, and not constantly be spinning our wheels because we don't have that clear direction of which way we want to go.
How would you describe your method of management? Please give some examples.
Sure, servant leadership, servant leadership, servant leadership. I can't say it enough. My father always taught me that you treat everybody equally, and you give everybody respect. And so in that, in all the businesses that he's always had me going out and loading trucks or cleaning bathrooms, and it didn't matter what it is. And as my career continued to move forward and I started to evolve from those jobs, I still go out and speak with everyone. So for example, just to give you a quick example of that, during the last potential hurricane that we could have been impacted with, at North Bay Village, we were handing out sandbags to our residents. We were saying, hey, there's 5 sandbags per household, come and get it. And we were shorthanded because we still needed to collect the garbage. They have in-house services, and they still needed to shore up the community. Well, I jumped out and I went to go do it. So my management style is what needs to be filled. And in Biscayne Park, there are a lot of things that need to be done. And there's only about, if I remember my research, there's about 22 employees, 25 employees. And so I think it's important that we have in a manager someone that we can shift from one topic to the next and be able to continue forward. And like I said before, I think it's crucial that the manager is a coach, is a team member, as well as the leader, not just someone who's a task manager and sends out a task and hope it gets done. That's not who I am. That's never been who I am, and it won't be who I will be for you.
What success have you had working with employees to help them to achieve their full potential?
Ooh, that's a good one. I love raising my team up. I love to train and mentor people so that they can even be better than I am. Because if I can surround myself with people who are even more skilled and even better than I can be, then the overall end product is only a benefit to what we're doing, and which is the community. And so it's being there not only as a boss, but being there as a person. We still all have lives, and sometimes the personal life bleeds into the work life. And so being able to have the employees trust each other and trust me to be able to tell me, hey, this is going on in my life, I need this extra afternoon, or hey, you know what, you're going through a lot right now, let's see how we can spread this out so that we can still manage the workload and still move forward, but still respect the person to understand that they have a life as well. And so being able to do those things and listening and understanding your vision, what are those tasks that need to be done, what are those deadlines, and how do we get there, whether it's working extra hours or working more efficiently and smart, then that's what we ultimately would have to do. So it's coaching them up and being there and listening to them. I think that's important. And I would even tell you that within my first 90 days, I want to meet not only with you all and not only with the department heads, but I want to meet with each individual employee. And I want to listen. I want to listen to what their experience has been, what they think we could be doing better. Because sometimes the person out on the street who's picking up or working within public works, they have these ideas, but they don't really speak up too often, and they could be saving a lot of money for the village. So I want to listen to those and see what those experiences are.
You already talked about this, but I want you to go more into what's your experience in working with a large budget?
So various different experiences that I've had. At MDX, I manage budgets between $700,000 to over $2.5 million. And at North Bay Village, for example, we have a budget where our police department alone is close to $6 million or something like that. And so the way that I like to approach the budget is, what do we need? And I almost want to start thinking of it from a net zero position. What is it that we need? Tell me how much it costs, and justify each individual type of budgeted item that we're going to be presenting to you. And so I do that because I want the millage rate and I want the taxes on our residents to be as low as possible. I understand that the major source of revenue, and I believe it's 74, 75%, something like that, of revenue for the village is through ad valorem taxes, and there's not a lot of diversification there. So we got to be very specific on why and how we're spending that money and how we can even diversify our revenue. So I would look at and go through each department, be able to identify things that are important, things that are, these are nice haves and these are must haves, and then be able to present to you what the best recommendations for those things are.
Have you ever had any experience with code department or code enforcement?
Very little. And so I recruited the code supervisor for North Bay Village. They were short 2 people within their department. I was able to contact a couple different vendors that the village was already under contract. I believe you have one with Calvin Giordano. They also provide code services. CAP is another government type of vendor who provides services for villages. And so we were able to bring someone in. He did an amazing job that we just wanted to hire him outright. I think for code, I have an overall philosophy, which is, if we're going to have something on the books where everybody's got to go by, and it's code within our charter and it's an ordinance, then it's got to be applied fairly to everybody. I do not go by the, well, this person, they had a loud party and I didn't like how they responded to me, so I'm going to go and no, I'm not for that. I'm as by the book as you can have, black and white when it comes to these. My moral compass is true north. I don't abide by it. So I want, whatever our code is, we need to go and move that forward. Ultimately, I think the responsibility of code is compliance, to educate people, to bring people into the compliance of the code. It's not just to go out there and become a money-making machine. That's not the point. And residents wouldn't appreciate that. At least in my opinion, I don't think that they would appreciate that. So I think the code officer needs to be able to go out there, be able to say, Commissioner Samaria, I see that there's this issue, and I apologize for using you, but I see this issue on your home. This is outside the code. I'm going to give you a warning, but these are different ways that we can do and educate the resident, because sometimes they might not even know that they're in violation of the code. So give them an opportunity to come into compliance, and then when it becomes a repeated offense or they just ignore that, that's when you go into the enforcement aspect of it. So I think education first, enforcement second.
We are in the spring of 2021. A severe wave of the coronavirus has been caused municipalities to revolt back to fully remote work, and Miami-Dade County back to phase 1 of the COVID crisis. What is your crisis management plan in action to go on with the coronavirus, keep your employees and residents safe?
So the very first thing I can tell you with the experience that we had in North Bay Village, the very first thing that we did was we made sure that everybody can work remotely, and we shut down non-essential services within the village. The less exposure that anybody can have, the better. The very first thing that I would do is definitely work with Chief Rivera. I believe that per your charter, under an emergency, he becomes the emergency manager through that. And so I would be working with him, and we would do and follow the guidelines that the county even has. Other municipal governments have more resources than Biscayne Park. And so I think it's prudent for us to understand what those municipalities and government agencies are doing and follow suit. Wherever we can piggyback on something, then I think that's going to save us not only time, but also resources and dollars ultimately. And so apart from shutting down, what we did is we made sure that we closed any areas where we can have common gatherings, because again, it's airborne. So we have to be very cautious as to what that's doing. In our offices right now at North Bay Village, you need to be wearing a mask, point blank. The only time you can take it off is if basically your door is closed and no one's in there with you. But outside of that, you are wearing a mask. I believe I have a couple here. I started looking because I'm a big guy, so some of them would just come around. So trying to get more comfortable with that. And I think people have started to adapt to those type of things. They understand what is going on. I completely disagree with the governor in putting in-person meetings right now, but it is what we have to do. And so I would make sure that the facilities that you are in, for first and foremost your safety, is able to have the proper spacing that you need, is able to have, whether it's plexiglass between, so that it helps any cross-contamination of airborne material or anything like that, and reduce touch points, the actual touch points, as much as possible. I think that's vital. But again, we would have to also see what the county requires and what the state requires, because sometimes it's out of our control. They're mandating it.
Have you had any experience writing RFP, contract negotiations, and writing grants?
Yeah, yes, I have. So recently, unfortunately, the procurement manager that was hired at North Bay Village, we separated, and so one of those jack of all trades, Mario, you're really good at this. Do you mind taking it over? So I have written scope of service just at North Bay Village alone for chief financial officers, services. I've currently written a draft for solid waste. I have done for land use development master planning. Recently helped complete a stormwater master plan RFQ. We've also done holiday lighting is something big. That's something that I've recently done as well. Landscape services. So yes, I've done plenty of that. I've actually created templates. I worked with the legal department to make sure that certain language, which is important, becomes standard. And it's not something we need to review every single time. But it is pretty extensive, I will tell you. And then I'm focused, now I'm able to get to the point where I'm just focused on what is the scope of work that's actually needed, so that we can put that out, and then we can have that, the pre-bid meetings, the deadlines for questions, answering those questions back. I do the bid openings. I help put together the evaluation committees. Before I was actually writing and doing the procurements, I was mainly the person on almost all of the evaluations, scoring and ranking the various firms. And even prior to here, to North Bay Village, at MDX, I did multiple procurements, not only from small purchases, and I do small purchases here now in North Bay Village as well, but for advertising and marketing. I learned a lot of the rules during not only my master classes at FIU, but working through DOT and MDX on what their procurement standards are. So a lot of times municipal colleagues will tell me, you do quite a bit more than maybe we do. And I was like, well, I'm doing DOT standard. And if it's that stringent, then it's okay, because better to be strict on our end than not have enough at the end.
Okay, this is a human resource question. A village employee approaches you and requests to speak with you privately. The employee is an extremely staff member, very dedicated to the town. However, she advises you that she has experienced a high level of anxiety and depression due to the personal issues and financial hardship. She is afraid of failing her job and afraid of failing her personal life. How do you handle this scenario? What is your strategy to support this employee during this difficult time?
Commissioner, one word: compassion. We go through so many different things in life, and at the end of the day, we need to have compassion for each other and understand that one person's difficulties, one person's emergencies in their personal life will carry over into their work life. Ultimately, as a manager, as a boss, you always want the best performance out of your employees as possible. but you have to consider that in order for them to perform to the best of their ability, you have to be compassionate about what's happening in their private life. And so what I would do is, if they're willing to speak with me, then I would gladly sit and listen. And in the opportunity, I would see how we can spread that workload out. Maybe that one task that's really bringing a lot of anxiety because they're not familiar with the process, or they don't have the proper skill set to do it. Well, then we find a way to split that up, or we find somebody else that might be able to tackle that on. At the end of the day, I think the one word that sums all of that up is compassion.
Could you, I know you talked about this in the beginning, but could you talk more about your contacts that you have within Dade County?
Absolutely. So one of those characteristics that I mentioned earlier is service to others. And for, I want to say, time flies. It's been at least 8 years. I've been the vice chair of the Hialeah Housing Authority. And so with that and in other areas and through MDX, I've gotten to know a lot of other city managers, county staff and department staffs, because again, these projects, they're touching multiple different departments, they're touching multiple different staffers, multiple different elected officials. And so I've been able to get to know beyond just from a working relationship, but a lot of times seeing them and going that extra mile. I try to be able to be an easy connection to make, because I think connections are amazing. I love to get to know people and to hear their stories. And so I want to meet them. And so I've met, and I'm really good friends with a lot of state reps. If you'd like, off camera, I'll be glad to share some of my connections. I just don't want to boast and say, oh, I know so-and-so and, you know, great. But I know a lot of state reps and senators, the county commissioners, I've had a lot of experience with. We had a very important mayoral race just recently. And Mayor-elect Cava, we got to understand what her type of administration, what kind of impact that's going to have on Biscayne Park. And so I can tell you that one of the things that are very dear to her is the environment. And right now, Biscayne Bay is being attacked, from fish kills to zero oxygen levels. There's a lot of stuff that is going on, and I could foresee that in her administration, her pushing more what the county has the moratorium to start converting from septic over to, and to get everybody from septic to sewer. I can see her really starting to push that to help protect the bay and to really shift. From my understanding, Biscayne Park is all septics. And so that's that's something that whoever is in this position really needs to be thinking and planning for, because that's not something that's simple or easy to do. That's a major undertaking and that can transform the village. And so it's important to understand that. Understanding the goals and the visions that each of those elected officials have, it's something that I like to do. I like to hear their story, get to know them, get to know their staff. You learn quite a lot from their staff. And a lot of times when you need an answer or you need a commitment, you don't necessarily go to the elected official. You go to the staff first and you talk to them, because then you can see how much leeway you have on a certain issue where they might be willing to support, or listen, don't bring it to me because that's not something I'm going to carry. So those type of relationships I've helped build over the past 15, 16, 20 years.
The village has a large list of priorities requiring immediate attention. What would be your approach as village manager to tackle that list of priorities? Also, from your research on Village of Biscayne Park, what would be some of the priority items you would immediately examine?
So, Commissioner, you were breaking up for me there. So
you want me to repeat
the question that I understood was, what are the list of priorities that I would have walking into the position, and how would I address those?
Let me just read it again.
Thank you.
The village has a large list of priorities requiring immediate attention. What would your approach as village manager to tackle that list of priorities? Also, from your research at the Village of Biscayne Park, what would be some of the priority items you would immediately examine?
Okay, thank you so much for repeating yourself, Commissioner Samaria. I do appreciate that. So the very first thing I would do is find out what your list of priorities are. I've heard several meetings, and I think everything is quite important, but each one of you have different tasks and different priorities. There are commonalities in between, and there is overlap, which is totally normal and totally fine. But I think it's important that I understand what the priorities are to you so that I can properly prioritize and say, okay, this goal that you have, it is very important, but that's going to take X amount of effort, which is more than what the village can have right now with the other projects. So to properly give you a list of priorities, I need to understand what your list is first before I can start working with each one of you. At the end of the day, the manager needs to be able to reflect what your vision and your priority is. You represent the people, not me. I report to you, you report to the people. And so I need to be able to understand where your comments, your concerns, your suggestions are from your residents and be able to translate that into an implementation plan. And so we need to work together on those things. The research that I've done and I've heard throughout the meetings, right now, I would think that the top three that come to mind is 6th Avenue, the solid waste procurement with Waste Pro, and some flooding issues. And I'm sorry, another one is repaving of streets, of certain areas of streets. So those have been pretty vocalized in past meetings. And I would say those are some of the bigger issues that we have to start addressing, that we could start putting a plan together and start moving forward quickly. I know that CITT has been another component that everybody's been working very hard, and you've had residents. I believe I see Mr. Ross there as well, that he's worked to put a lot of it together and help get us to the next phase with CITT. But at the end of the day, I need to understand what all of your priorities are and give you all a plan and a map on how to navigate through that to get what your vision for the community is. It's not my vision, it's yours.
I enjoy this conversation. I have a lot more questions, but I want to be fair with our time and live within my times for the other commissioners. Again,
Absolutely.
I
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Okay,
Samaria.
thank you, Commissioner Samaria. Commissioner Kennedy, would you like to go on now?
Sure. I hope someone keeps an eye on the time. I'm going to start a timer for myself. We're supposed to be limiting this to 10 minutes per commissioner to stay on schedule because we have another applicant waiting on deck here. May I call you Mario?
Yes, please, Vice Mayor.
Okay, please call me Mac. I like the first name thing. So Mario, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And you, in your introduction, which was very nice, you hit on a couple of things that I wanted to talk to you about. So I'm going to skip a couple of my questions and dig a little deeper into some others. You referenced vision and action plan several times. So you rang bells in my head. So I was very happy to hear that. So I'd like to hear you explain the difference between a vision and an action plan, who's responsible for each, and how do those two things dovetail into each other?
So I think ultimately the vision that you have for a community or a project is your end goal, what you're always striving for. And I like to put those visions maybe a little bit out of reach, right? Not that they're unattainable, but a little bit out of reach, because as you continue to work towards that vision, towards those goals, things pop up. No one expected COVID to come up and kind of ruin our year, especially the holiday season. So I think it's important for us to continue to work towards the goals and the strategy that we have for that. It's why during the budget session, I want to be able to work with you all to have a strategic plan, essentially a smaller version of a full strategic plan, but be able to say, these are the things that we're going to be focusing on. Once we understand what those projects are, then we can identify the steps that we're going to do to obtain those goals. So for instance, if, and I know there's a lot of different, there's not a clear direction yet, but if the village's goal was to have a complete street on 6th Avenue. Okay, now we know what that is. Now we know what that's going to look like, what we want that to look like. how do we start building our process internally, and what steps do we need to take in order to get there? Do we need to hire a designer? Do we need to have traffic management and count how many cars so that we can alter what DOT is thinking of doing in that area? All of those individual steps are working to that ultimate goal of sidewalks, parking, reduced lanes, pedestrian traffic. That's your vision. That's what we need to identify, and that's what we need to visualize. And then how do we write down the plan to get to that point? That, I think, are the two differences.
Who's responsible for each?
I would say that the visioning responsibility comes from the residents and the commission with guidance of administration. And so I think ultimately that's why I want to be able to implement the annual surveys, that we can say not only how do you like the services that you're being offered, but what do you think about these projects moving forward, and be able to get that kind of priority, and then work with you in a strategic session or an executive session with you and your colleagues to be able to say, these are what the residents tell us. What are you hearing? What are the vision? And come out of that with saying, okay, these are the top 5 projects that we want to accomplish in the next budget year. And then it is staff's job to implement what your vision and what your goals for the community are. I can help recommend what those goals and what those projects might be, and I can help be able to explain, listen, I know that we really want to build a Taj Mahal for the log cabin, but I don't think we'll be able to afford it, and here's why. But if ultimately everybody decides, Mario, we heard you, but we still want the Taj Mahal, okay, well, then I need to find a way of how to deliver that Taj Mahal to you, and be able to give very clear expectations of, we can build it, but it's going to cost X amount, and the only way to reach that dollar figure is by doing these next steps. And then if you guys are still okay with building that, then that's what we move forward, because ultimately you are all responsible to the residents for that.
Okay, good answer. Thank you very much. You rang the bell a couple of times there for me personally, so thank you for that. We're going to go quickly here because I'm going to stick to my time limit, and I want to ask you a bigger question here. In interviews, we tend to focus on achievement. So you're going to tell us all the great things you've done and all the wonderful experience you've had. But the reality is that no one's perfect, and you've had some failures in your career. I want to look back. I would like you to, I'm going to change gears here and discuss some failures with a positive twist on that. I'd like you to look back on your career and tell us about something important that you tried and at which you failed. And then I want you to tell us what you learned. I want you to tell us why you failed and what you learned from it that you still carry with you today. So a failure became a learning tool for you. And I'm going to give you bonus points if you can come up with an example for us of something that you failed, you learned something, and because of what you learned, you went back and tried it a second or third time, and you succeeded at it because you did it differently based on what you learned.
You know, Mac, you're really throwing those fastballs, huh? So I think the one thing, well, first and foremost, I don't like the word failure. You only fail when you don't learn anything and you don't try to correct it. But something that I didn't accomplish the goal that I had set out or wanted. The one I still kind of carry with me is at MDX. I was promoted to communications manager, so I saw all aspects of the agency and its communication. We had an amazing campaign that we put together. We won an award for it, a national award with PR News for it back in 2015. And for the most part, you know, everything's going great. The agency had a reputation of being corrupt and overcharging and not doing anything for the community, to on the front page of the Miami Herald saying they came up with this innovative program to give money back based on performances that they had, and they're giving you a check expected this way. It was front page. Things are going great, but politically, the agency kept getting attacked, and they still got attacked for many, many years. The failure, where did that come? I did everything I could to try to alter the conversation from a strictly tolls versus buses versus Metro Rail and cars to a transportation type of conversation, because they're all spokes in a wheel. They all need each other to work together. If not, they start failing individually. And so for a while, I thought we were moving in the right direction, but with politics, things just happen. And sometimes there's no logic. It's just going to happen. And ultimately, even a senator who was a friend of mine, he was proposing a bill against the agency. We had talks numerous times. He was in front of the committee, and some of the others, his colleagues, said, "Senator, I don't quite understand everything that I'm reading in the paper, all the material that the agency is providing. It sounds like they're doing an amazing job, and the community, it doesn't sound as pandemic levels as what you're putting. Why this?" And he goes, "You know what? Honestly, they're probably doing too good of a job of communicating that, and they need to be spending that attention elsewhere." And ultimately, it passed where the legislation voted against the agency and did a lot of cuts and revisions and things like that. It's not anything that I can control, so I don't necessarily take it as a personal failure, but I never accomplished the goal that I wanted. So what happened next time? Well, I'm now at North Bay Village, and we have several projects and several things that we wanted to accomplish. And ultimately, North Bay Village is not the city of Miami that has billions of dollars of a budget, or the city of Miami Beach with almost $500 million budget. They're very limited, just like Biscayne Park. And so I took a different approach. I went and I made sure that we started a conversation with our elected officials to be able to say, these are the goals that we have. These are the projects that we have lined up that they're ready to go, and we can budget. We could use your help. And so by changing the approach in how we address the legislative in Tallahassee, we were actually able to accomplish the goal that the village has, which is bring in money from the state down to the village and able to do pump station repairs and things like that, as sidewalk improvements. So I think last year it was about between 400,000 to 600,000, and I'm off on the project numbers, so I apologize for not having the dollar amount with you. But because of that change of approach and because of the life lessons that I've kind of learned, where the agency prior, MDX, kind of beat their chest saying, you know, we're doing good, this is how it should be, to now being more collaborative at North Bay Village and saying, this is what we need, how can we help you and how can you help us? I think that's a life lesson I kind of take it.
That sounds like something valuable that you learned. We only have a couple of seconds here left in my time. I'm going to ask Ginny if I can go over a little bit, because this is something I think you can answer quickly. I'd like to discuss accountability with you. You were very clear that the commission has a responsibility to residents, and that you report to us, and the direction comes down from us to you, and you roll things out for us, and you have a very clear understanding of that. Tell us how you like to be held accountable and measured. Because we want you to say, look, bottom line is, we want someone to come here and succeed at this. And when we give you a task, I, as a commissioner, want to know what's going on. So, and so you can succeed at it. I'm tired of playing the gotcha games after the fact and things falling apart later on. Tell us how you want to be held accountable and measured by this commission.
So I think the easiest way to hold a village manager accountable is in their yearly reviews. And the process that I'm trying and I've recommended for you in the budgeting is a clear example. Because if as a commission, you're able to say, these are the top projects that we want and these are the top priorities that we want, then my goal are those things. And if those things aren't fulfilled, then that's an easy check to say, well, you failed at this, you failed at this, you failed at this. Although I believe it's going to be, you did this right. Now, I will tell you, I like to be able to say, Mac, that's an amazing idea. However, let me talk it over with staff, get you a plan, and get you real-time expectation as to what it is. I'm not someone who's just going to immediately say, yes, absolutely, great idea, I'll have it delivered next week, and not have any idea of what it's going to take to actually implement. So I would immediately try to set real expectations for you. And if I tell you it's going to take me a month to get through, and in a month something happens where COVID, for example, happens like Mac, this is going on, we're going to have to kind of delay it. As long as those lines of open communication are with you and the rest of the commission, I think there's an understanding there. But at the end of the day, that strategic process, that budgeting process, I think is the easiest way for a commission to evaluate a village manager, because you're setting the clear goals ahead of the year to work towards.
So we have an overall vision of where we want to go. You develop an action plan to get us there. We measure you against the plan.
Exactly.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you very much for your time. Jenny, I'm
Thank
done.
you, Mac.
Thank you. Commissioner Tudor, would you like to go next?
Yeah, we can take this off real quick so we can hear you a little bit better. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Commissioner Tudor. How are you?
No, not too bad, not too bad. Surviving the pandemic, I guess we all are. Real quick,
I'm sorry, Commissioner, you're very low, and I think some background noise is hurting.
Yeah, you need to talk more inside of the divider. Maybe your sound is too low. No, I think. Give us a second.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
The joys of technology.
Right?
Hopefully I'll be able to get through my questions with here without another technology gaffe here. But real quick, my first two questions are very general in nature, and then I have just a few questions that are a little bit more specific to Biscayne Park. The first one, what do you believe are the greatest attributes that a successful manager must have?
Greatest attributes, that is great. Hopefully I've been communicating those attributes through me. Open communication and regular communication, not only with the commission, but also with the residents. I just think that's important. Everything that I've ever seen, whether it's in personal relationships, whether it's in the history books, has always been a failure to communicate. And as long as there's open lines of communication, I think that you're able to trust the system, trust the process, and trust the results that are coming through. When you don't have those things, then everything is constantly questioned, and you have the initial doubt, and you're unwilling to accept anything that might actually be coming through. So the very first thing is being organized and communicating with you. I believe the second attribute that's important in any leader, and I mentioned it earlier, is compassion. Being able to understand that life happens, and your child being sick or getting hurt might take precedent over finishing that report. A good leader is going to be able to say, you need to take care of your family. I need to get that report done, whether it's stepping in and doing that report themselves or being able to get that report done through something else. Those are being able to shift from one point to the next. I think those are vital things that need to happen, especially in a place like Biscayne Park. You have essentially 22, 25 employees, something around that number. You don't have thousands of people like bigger cities do. You need someone who's going to be able to pivot and shift as the tide comes to do that. So someone who's able to do that, and someone who's willing to listen, I think is also very important. A lot of times staff in government, because we do this often and we do these tasks over and over and over again, we tend to believe that we know best. But we're not listening to what the commission, or we're not listening to what the residents want. It's like, great, I'm glad you've done it 1,000 times, but that's not what I'm asking you. And when we start getting that tunnel vision, so being able to step back, listen to what's going on and what the feedback is, and then being able to address those things, I think those are vital. And then lastly, being open to knowing that you don't know everything. So I don't know how to run a police department. I am so glad to learn that Chief Crabere is doing an amazing job over there for you all. And so being able to trust and listen to the experts and surround myself with people who are experts in their field, so that ultimately the best service is given to improve the quality of life for you and the residents.
Okay, thank you with that answer. We're going to get into, my next question has to do with kind of touches on budget and finances. We've never utilized a multi-year financial forecast. What do you feel are the greatest benefits of creating a multi-year financial forecast?
It is so important at a bare minimum for a capital infrastructure project, so CIP. It's already needed for CITT, so you're kind of already in that process for that. It's important because it starts laying out what that, again, going back to what the vision of the village is. What are the needs that you need to address? If I know, for example, and going back to the example that I have with the septic tanks and needing to plan for that, if we know that that's going to ultimately be a goal within the next 10 years, that type of construction can cost several millions of dollars. I know in Fort Lauderdale, they did have the city, much bigger city than Biscayne Park, but it was about $1 billion back then to be able to do that for them. So being able to say, okay, we need to budget, you know, it could be 5, it could be 10 million, it could be whatever. With our budget the size that it is, we need to start budgeting that many years in advance. So if we can put that on some type of plan that we can start working towards, it makes staff life a lot easier because we already know what we're working towards. And it also makes your life a lot easier because as you're talking with the residents and you're talking to the goals, hey, that's a great idea and I know it's important, but in 3 years, we're gonna have this major construction project coming down the line. We need to start maybe holding off some of these projects here so that we can afford without going into a long-term debt to be able to afford some of these projects. So it's vital to have that not only from a CIP standpoint, but if we can do those forecasts to regular general funds, I think it's important. It's something that we're trying to implement now at North Bay Village. I was recently, and the great thing about relationships is I picked up the phone and I spoke with a very dear friend of mine. She's the village manager over at Pinecrest. And she sat down for 3 hours one morning and walked me through the process, showed me how she laid it all out. And I was able to really look at that process. And they have that type of multi-year forecasting in there. And when I spoke with Anna Garcia, who used to be the village manager there at Biscayne Park, she also told me and was able to really kind of confirm the thoughts and everything that I want, where in a village as small as Biscayne Park and North Bay Village and some of the other surrounding villages, we can't afford not to have a multi-year plan because anything can automatically divert that plan. And all of a sudden, if you don't know what's going on, not only this year, but the year after and the year after that, then you're at a disadvantage where you can be taking advantage of a market now to be able to make up those differences in future years to come.
Okay, thank you for that. You know, we all understand that community interactions are key to developing and maintaining good relationships with residents. However, given a limited staff, there are business matters that must be addressed in a timely manner. How would you manage these two expectations?
That's why I would be the village manager, right? At the end of the day, for you all, the buck stops with me. Whether there's 100 different staffers that are reporting to me or not. And so if it means that, hey, Mario, you know what? In order for us to be able to communicate with the residents and we want to have as big as an audience as we can, obviously during work hours, that's not possible. So not a problem. Commission, I'll come in on a weekend and we'll do some type of event. We'll do, you know, maybe it's let's walk around the park, let's walk our dogs, let's ride bikes together. Let's do whatever the process is needed that's as convenient as possible for the community. I think the benefit that COVID, I can't believe I'm saying benefit and COVID together, I apologize, but that's given it, it's really pushed society into a more digital world as quickly as possible. And that's opened up more doors than what we've had before. So now where an event during a work hour during the week is very limited in the participation, now because of Zoom or some other methods, we can actually have more people join in, whether they're driving and they have it on their Bluetooth, or they just have it on the screen on their desk. There's a lot more opportunity to interact, where it just doesn't have to be, oh, I need to go there at this specific time. And then spending it on different times, not only of the week, but of the day. Coffee with a cop could be something that we do first thing in the morning. Sorry, Chief. Or at 7 o'clock in the morning, we have, coffee and things like that. And as people are walking out the house, they're able to, have a quick cup, have a 10-minute conversation, and go on their day. Well, that's okay. Sometimes staff will go that extra mile because they're passionate of the job they do. I'm pretty sure, and I haven't met the entire staff or anything like that at Biscayne Park, but I'm pretty sure they're passionate about the job that they're doing for you all. And every so often, I don't think they'll mind going that extra step for everybody.
Okay. Let's see. I only have 2 more questions here. You touched on this earlier regarding code compliance, and some on the commission and some residents have stated in the past that the village needs to hit residents in the pocketbook to gain code compliance. Do you feel this is appropriate, or should the village work with residents when needed? And the second part of that is, if you believe that, as you stated earlier, that educating residents is a key, what steps would you take to educate the residents?
So I think it's case by case basis. I think ultimately you need to be fair with everybody, and you have to have the appropriate process to be fair with everyone. First and foremost, for me, I prefer education first. I know what it is to all of a sudden walk in and have a $250 fine, whether it's a speeding ticket, or it's because your grass is too long, or because you never got to the car that's in front of your yard, and that's not allowed by city ordinance. Sometimes there are things that happen in life where all of a sudden getting fined doesn't actually help the situation. So what I would probably work with our code enforcement officers is, tell me right now, what are the top 10 issues within the village that you're constantly addressing? Let's develop, whether it's a 1-page fact sheet or a small little trifold brochure or whatever it is, and let's get that out to the community. Let's educate them as to what they need to know so that they can be in compliance. Then once that's done, go up to the property and saying, hey, explain to them what the situation is, give them the leave behind, and give them a grace period. And so right now we're in a grace period at North Bay Village because they went to a plastic-free village, so the businesses shouldn't be using single-use plastics like straws, utensils, or even water bottles. Don't tell them that I'm using this, please. And so right now they're in a grace period. So our code enforcement officer just yesterday went to every restaurant and business that has this type of use, grocery stores and restaurants and things like that. And hey, remember, I've already come by, I explained to you what it is, I showed you what the code was, I explained to you the rules. Yeah, I remember. Well, I still see that you're using it. Here's a written warning. You have until the end of the year is what our grace period is. You have until the end of the year to make sure you're in compliance. And then after that, you go back the third time, right? And so now the third time is, we talked. I gave you a warning. Now I got to give you a fine. And whatever that fine is, as long as you're being responsible and you're treating everyone the exact same way and there's no favoritism, then I think residents will feel, you know what, you're right, that was on me, sorry. There are processes for appeal. So the resident could say, I'm just going to pay the fine and I'm done. Or they could appeal and say, you know what, I don't think it's necessarily fair. And so for Biscayne Park, I know that you had a code advisory board and you have a special magistrate as well as part of your code. So they can appeal towards that if they'd like to do that as well. But as long as everyone's treated fairly, then I think you continue that process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I ask one last question? This will be the final question I have.
Very short.
Okay.
Short answer.
I'll ask the question really fast. Our charter is very clear on the role of commissioners and manager. Specifically, individual commissioners are not allowed to direct the manager or staff to take any particular actions. However, concerns have been raised by some that certain commissioners have crossed this line. With that said, as a manager, how would you address and mitigate this issue if you are confronted with it?
I think we've already mentioned it in the past. I think the budget process and getting and setting those expectations of what the manager's role and what staff is working towards, I think is very, very critical for any government of any size. When everybody is on the same page as to what's important, I think that helps level everything out, because right now as commissioners, you have a lot on your plate and you're trying to move this village forward without sufficient staff or even having a village manager. There's only so much that the interim manager, Prado, can do as clerk and manager, and with the elections and everything that's going on. So you're taking a lot of that load onto yourself. I think I would also set up regular communication on a weekly basis, whether it's a scheduled meeting or a phone call, as long as we can make sure, like, hey, I know that every Wednesday I'm going to be talking to Mac between 4 and 6 p.m. or 7 and 8 in the morning or whatever it is. Then that becomes more of the routine, and then I think it makes it a lot easier, not only for the commission but also for staff as well, to be able to manage the work-life environment.
And that was my last question.
Thank you. Commissioner Ross?
Thank you so much, Commissioner Tudor.
Thank
Hello,
you.
Commissioner Ross.
Hello, Mario. Call me Rox, please.
I hope my mom's not watching, because she's always raised me. You be respectful when you call them, you address everyone by their title and you say yes ma'am, no ma'am. So the first name is always throwing me off.
Yeah. Well, but this is like a little more casual environment, and so I appreciate that. I also appreciate your comprehensive answers, because as we've gone through the night, my list of questions has really been checked off, check, check, check. And we've gotten to know a lot about you and your responses. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
If you have been following our process, which I'm sure it sounds like you've done a lot of research on us, so you have been following our manager selection process, you know that several of the applicants have taken other positions, and they seem to be applicants that had multiple irons in the fire, looking for the best proposal that would come their way. I'm wondering if in the last 12 months you've applied or interviewed for other city manager positions.
I have applied. I have never interviewed. I think one of the other positions that I have, I actually interviewed was for an assistant city manager position in Broward. But I don't make it a habit of just applying to anything that's out there. I really look at the situation of what's in front of us and what we can do and how I can accomplish the goal set forth, at least by the advertisement there. I start doing research into the area, the city. So when I do an application, it's not just, let's just see what sticks on a wall. I kind of hate that. I don't want to just throw ideas and see what's going to stick and, okay, I guess that worked. So when I apply somewhere, it's very deliberate. And I think that was back in, I want to say March or February. And that's essentially it. So with Biscayne Park, I was very deliberate as to why I wanted to apply. And I don't have any other applications out there at all. North Bay Village, there's still a lot to be accomplished, but I think that Biscayne Park offers an opportunity for me to not only grow as an individual and professionally, but like I said, I've been walking these streets and I absolutely adore this community right now. And I haven't even started the parks, the medians that you have, the ability to be walking down the street and not fear someone driving 75 miles an hour in a residential area. These are all things that everybody wants in their home and in their neighborhood, but you'd actually be surprised at how many neighborhoods live up to that reputation. And I think that what you have there and what I can bring to this organization is it will take the village to this next level where we can really be the model of what a small little community means and how we can work together to accomplish all the goals. I think there's a lot of opportunity here, even to diversify our revenues and to bring more service to residents.
Good, thank you. I'm going to switch over to negotiating contracts, and I'd like you to describe for us a work-related experience where you negotiated something that you or your municipality wanted and the other side did not want to give.
Okay. Actually, I'm pretty proud of this one. So at North Bay Village right now, there's very limited space. They have three parks. They have 2 parks and 1 dog park. But everything is very small and very tiny. You actually have more facilities available to residents than North Bay Village does at this very moment, even though you have 1 big park. And so one of the things that the mayor wanted was to be able to use unused school property for a community park. Now, any negotiation with the county school board is not easy, and it constantly takes years to try to get anything done. I approach negotiation very differently than I want to say most people do. I don't look for I win, you lose type of scenario. I look for a win-win. And so I am okay being able to tell you, this is everything I'm trying to accomplish. What are you trying to accomplish? And listening to that, and then finding where those middle grounds are. And because in a negotiation, you're never going to get everything you want, and they're never going to get everything they want. So there's compromise, and that's an important word in negotiation. It's compromise. And so with the school board, within 8 months, we were able to work out and hash out a deal where we are moving forward with a design of a park. Both the North Bay Village Commission and the school district board, they passed a joint use agreement, a resolution authorizing a 30-year essential lease for some of those lands where we're sharing the property between the school and the village. And hopefully within, if everything lines up just right, the way I've been putting it, within 2 years, they should have a community park that never existed before on school grounds.
That's wonderful. Great. Touching a little bit on the issue of going septic to sewer has come up in some of the answers.
Yes.
And also the issue of CITT and CITT funds, which are restricted for transit and transportation. We have the village has about $400,000 to $600,000 in that restricted fund. And I've always thought it an interesting concept to sort of parlay those funds with perhaps a state allocation to improve our streets and maybe the infrastructure with that. We're currently in a situation with CITT where it's like a use or lose. They want us to use those funds or they're going to start clawing them back.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of strategies would you pursue to maximize the use of those funds and sort of attain the greatest improvement for the village?
So I'll tell you what we're doing in North Bay Village right now. We've leveraged the CITT funds that we have so that we can repave every single street within North Bay Village. And so those repaving projects are about between $2 to $5 million, depending on how extensive you can be and how many streets and so forth. And so what we've done is we've taken out a loan at North Bay Village, and it's paid by CITT funds, and that was authorized by CITT. The very first thing that we should always do is make sure that however we want to use those funds, CITT approves. I do have a prior relationship with their director, Javier Bentacourt, from my time at MDX and when he was in Coral Gables and things like that. And he actually sat on a master plan RFP evaluation committee. So I've been able to pick his brain a little bit about that, and they're open to listening how the villages want to do it. And a lot of times we'll see that it's not something brand new that we need to invent for CITT. So the very first thing, if the goal is we want all of the streets within North Bay Village, or I'm sorry, within Biscayne Park repaved as soon as possible, one option that you have is to leverage the yearly allotted funds from CITT to pay back a loan to pay for the overall project. Now, I don't know if that will translate for, you mentioned the septic tank conversion into sewer. And again, that's just something from a past experience I have. I'm not saying you immediately have to do this or anything like that. But I don't know if CITT would could be used for something like that. They're more specific in their roles, but we can always approach and ask. And if you don't ask, you don't know. So that's something that we can definitely find out and kind of move forward. The other aspect within CITD that you need to allocate is about 20% towards transportation projects. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, from bus repairs. Listen, we're in South Florida. On a winter day, it's 80 degrees. And so there are buses not only throughout the country, but throughout the world, bus stops that are actually air conditioned. And so if we do have any type of bus areas, instead of just having a bench, we need to use those funds, or we're going to lose all of the CITT funding. We can use that to make it comfortable so that it's more attractive for the user to actually use and be able to use those services. Another thing that we use at North Bay Village currently is for Freebie. Freebie is being used by multiple different municipalities throughout the area. And the great thing with Freebie is that the way that CITT uses their funds is on a transportation scale. Freebie can go up to 5 miles outside of the village. So when you draw a radius of 5 miles around the village of Biscayne Park, now you're providing access for your residents to be able to get to and from different locations that are not within the village, but that they don't need to use a car for, thus reducing the amount of dependency we have on our car, which is what CIT loves. They love to see that, especially Javier. He loves to see more mass transit and less individual car usage. So being able to understand what their goals are and how to align them with the village's goals are is how you can leverage those funds to move projects that ultimately maybe the village couldn't afford by itself.
Very good, thank you. I think this might be my last question because I'm running out of time. You touched a little bit on our financials, the CAFR, the comprehensive financials, and the audited report for 2019 shows we're reporting a little bit over $1 million in unrestricted reserve funds. We're also anticipating FEMA to soon make good on our Hurricane Irma claims. That'll bring in about $700,000 in addition. So in 2021, and given that we're going to have an impact from COVID on our property values, we should be sitting well with $1.7 million of things. And one reason why we achieved that fund is because a lot of projects have been put off. There's a lot of things that we've been wanting to do in the village for a while that we haven't been able to do. Things from storm drainage to installing a permanent generator at Village Hall, to putting a parking surface down at the rec center. So how first of all, what level of unrestricted reserve do you advise as comfortable for the city to have, percentage-wise? And how would you balance maintaining that reserve at a comfortable level with implementing these long-awaited projects that we want to have done?
Roxy, that's a great question. That's a great question. Normally, industry standard that GFOA recommends is about 20 to 25% of a reserve for city funds. However, I don't think Biscayne Park is normal because our revenues are tied strictly to the ad valorem taxes. And so because our overall revenue and expenses are relatively low, a 20% I don't think is going to cover if we have an emergency or a hurricane. It's wonderful that we have the canopy within Biscayne Park that we have, but one good windstorm and a direct hit is going to put that on the ground. And so that's not just going to cost $10,000 because we're a small city. That can still cost upwards of tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even millions of dollars, depending on what kind of damage we're talking about. And so I'm actually would say that I'm kind of comfortable where you are right now. You know, as you approach the 50% mark of it, you start to ask, could we make the money work for us, right? So although you have the hard cash on hand, if you pay for generators and everything and you don't use any type of credit or debt, then you end up reducing your overall cash. And when an emergency does come, you're limited on what you can do. But if you're able to manage it correctly, where you can use a certain level of debt that you're comfortable with, and you can use that to obtain the assets and the capital projects and pay that over years, I think it's more fair for the residents to do it that way. And in the case of an emergency, then, oh my goodness, we need to spend $2 million on what's going on. Well, we have 1.7. So we're a lot closer to that mark under this emergency for whatever that could be. An example that I would give you is, let's say we had a fire department and we wanted to buy a fire truck. You could pay for the fire truck with cash all up front. That means that all your current residents now paid for that service. However, the new residents that come in years down the line, because that fire truck is going to be in service for the next 10, 15, 20 years, or whatever the lifespan is, those new residents, they're not paying anything towards it. Thanks for paying it all for me, but I'm receiving the fee benefit. By using your debt service at the correct level, then the resident that comes by and moves into the village 2 years down the line, they're paying their fair share for the service that's being provided to them. And so I think Paul Winklejohn and has good instincts. Everything that I've seen and that I've read about online when I've done a little bit of research on him and the company, they have good instincts. So it's really to be able to provide to you and the commission a plan of what appropriate debt service levels that we should carry, and then pay for those large capital expenses over time, as opposed to just take everything we have in the bank and just give it up front, because then we do live in South Florida, one good hurricane, and we're talking about millions of dollars of damages that we need to kind of recover.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive answers, Mario. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you, Roxy. I appreciate the time and being here.
Thank you. No, but that's after I finish. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm talking. FAA, you know, they've changed their flight plan. They've signed off on it, and many municipalities, including us, are quite upset about it. There are different ideas. I don't know if North Bay Village has this problem, if it's going over there. And what ideas do you have on what we can do?
I can tell you, absolutely, Mayor. I can tell you that I'm appalled that the FAA would essentially ignore over 2,500 public comments and sensible recommendations. I'm appalled at it and the way that they did it. So at North Bay Village, not only did we pass a resolution to send a letter for comment during the public comment stage, we also just passed a resolution against what they've proposed and implemented. We've worked, or I'm personally in communication with the assistant city manager of North Miami Beach, who's kind of leading up the efforts for them. I know that Bay Harbor Islands is also looking to do, as well as yourself, ourselves, and North Miami as well. We've essentially all passed resolutions. And so we've asked the Dade League of Cities and even the Florida League of Cities, because Orlando area is also heavily affected, to see if they will take the charge. We don't have big legal departments, and so we can't just sue, or we don't have the pockets to be able to do that. So as Biscayne Park, the best recommendation is hopefully either Orlando or the League of Cities or another larger municipality does move forward with litigation that you can then be a part of as well. I think it's important that if we can all band together as one unified voice, and we can get more of the municipalities, even those are not affected, if they can understand that today you're not affected, but tomorrow you may be, and right now you need to protect essentially your home rule and your home quality of life, then we can stop. It's been stopped in other parts of the country. And so those are the options that I think are viable for Biscayne Park, is partnering with Dade League, Florida Leagues, and your other municipal partners to be able to tell the FAA to stop what you're doing.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor Kennedy has a very short questionnaire for you. Go
Okay.
ahead,
Thank
Vice
you.
Mayor Kennedy.
Okay, so are we going to dispense with the follow-up portion of this, Ginny? I know we won't way over time, so
I know.
Are we going to
I
jump right
know.
to the end? Okay, just wanted to
Does
make sure
anybody
we were
think
aware.
we need
Okay.
a follow-up?
I'll be honest and say that between his comprehensive answers to other people's questions and the things I got to ask him, I'm very satisfied with.
Yeah, we don't.
I have
really
nothing else to ask him. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So Mario, we would like to give you an assignment as a follow-up to this first interview. Tomorrow, before you have the benefit of watching the video of this meeting, we'd like you to send a recap to Roseanne. Recap what we discussed here tonight, any topics that were left unanswered, anything that you think about that you would like to clarify or expand upon. And it's your choice of format and content. So we're going to let you decide what was, the most important things that you want to recap for us. We want to compare your notes and priorities to ours, quite frankly, and we'd like you to email that to Roseanne. She'll share it with the full commission. It will also become part of public record so residents can see it as well. Is 24 hours from now a reasonable time for you to get that to us?
I believe so, yes.
Wonderful. So it's almost 9 o'clock. So tomorrow, by this time tomorrow night, Roseanne will have something that she can share with the rest of us.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much
That's
for
great.
coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for
I
this opportunity
appreciate it.
to meet you, and I hope to be able to meet you in person soon.
Hopefully. Okay, thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, have a good night.
Okay, Roseanne. Okay, now you're big, huh? You want to,
Give me 1 second, let me,
bring in Peggy Castano.
While she's getting it, can I ask the commissioners to set a timer on their phone? We agreed to 10 minutes each.
Yes, I know.
And I don't, so if everyone set a timer on their phone and limit themselves, that would be great.
Yes, Commissioner Samaria. Okay, no problem.
I wasn't going to name names.
Well, and we all know it. It was just that, but, I think that it's respectful to let somebody finish answering a question. So a minute or so is good, but
Yeah.
Mr. Samaria, remember your time limit on the next one, please. Is Peggy on the?
I was relying on the clerk to watch.
so can I let her in?
Yes, please.
I saw, I told her that I was getting 3 minutes, but it went less. Where is she? There she goes. Unmuted. Okay.
The way you spotlighted last time, Roseanne, was excellent, by the way. Thank you for that.
Yes, I'm gonna put her. Hi, Peggy.
Okay. Hello, Peggy Castano. Welcome to Biscayne Park. Would you like to give your presentation, please?
Sure. Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, and everyone in attendance. My name is Peggy Castano, and I am very happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. Do you have a presentation that you would like to give us?
Sure.
Welcome, Roger.
Okay, so I have been in municipal government for the past 8 years, working in 2 cities. My background before that was criminal justice, working for the state of Florida. Currently, I am in the city of Lauderdale Lakes. I serve as the assistant to the city manager and the administrative services director. I currently manage the Mayor and Commissioner's Office, Public Works, Community Improvement Projects, and the City Clerk's Office. I wear multiple hats in the city, and I am humbled to be a part of this recruitment process. I hope that I can be a part of Biscayne Park and bring my skill set and be able to encourage those in the village.
Is that it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. Commissioner Ross, would you like to start this time?
I don't.
Yes.
Okay.
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 I'll get my notes together here. So welcome, Peggy. Thank you for meeting us tonight, and thank you for adjusting your schedule so that you could accommodate us tonight instead of tomorrow night.
Thank you.
If you've been watching, and I'm sure you have been watching our recruitment process, you are aware that several of the candidates that first applied have taken jobs in other cities or dropped out of the process. So they appeared to have had multiple irons in the fire, looking for the, I guess, best opportunity to suit them. I'm wondering, in the last 12 months, have you applied or interviewed for a city manager position with other municipalities?
No, the last application that I had was with the city of Plantation, and it was for their deputy administrator. I had not, with COVID and all that's been going on in our city, I had not been back to the to applying. And now that everything's starting back up and everything seems to be a bit stable, then that's when I started applying again. But I have not.
Okay, so what drove you to apply for the position in our village?
Well, what was different about the village was the size. And I believe that I can make an impact in the village. So I come from two different cities. I worked in a city that was 16,000 residents, and right now I'm working for one that's almost 38,000 residents. And I am so engaged every day. I believe a smaller city, I can make impact and bring more things to the table. I am a very innovative thinker. I like to just have the approach of get it done. Empowering those around me, encouraging those around me, you know, bringing just a harmonious workplace for everyone. So I think that Biscayne Park would be the good fit for me.
Okay, thank you for that answer. My next question is more about your relationship skills. So I'd like to know if you have the ability to develop positive relationships with the elected officials individually and collectively, but also treat them all equally. So members of this commission may not agree among ourselves what priorities are, for example, and if you put it all together, we create an oversized laundry list of things that each one of us wants to accomplish. How do you, in building your relationships, approach the prioritizing or perhaps matching up or building consensus to achieve all those various goals?
So that currently is part of my day-to-day. I manage the Mayor and Commission's office and their legislative aides. So I'm kind of the gatekeeper between the city manager and the staff and the Mayor and Commission. I have a great relationship with each and every one of them, understanding their personalities, their visions, their goals, and I understand that I am put in place to make sure that those things get taken care of and to make sure that their vision and goals come to life. the best way that it can happen for everyone involved. So I have a lot of experience. I've been doing that for about 7 years now. And it's amazing to be able to be in that position. A very important part of this is to have a retreat annually. This works very well for my setting right now. I will have a retreat to have strategic planning in place, to put goals and milestones and accountabilities, efficiencies in place that we all can agree to. And this usually takes place once a year in an informal setting where we can all collectively just brainstorm. And it becomes a group effort. It becomes, we learn why, the whys or the why nots, and just come together and make things happen.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that we are or will be facing shortly is to negotiate a contract for solid waste, if that's the way that the commission decides to go. And so can you describe for us a work-related experience where you negotiated for something you or your city wanted and the other side did not want to give?
So I would have to bring up our design projects, our sidewalk project with the city. We were not in agreement with the design cost. We had to negotiate that price, and we had to go to the MPO to make sure that they will agree with us to bring an in-house engineer that would cost, the cost was tremendously, it was a big difference. So only design was $495,000 for our project. That would have to come out of general fund. So we went with the route of having the MPO approve us hiring an engineer that could provide those design services for a fraction of the cost. So that's one of my experiences with negotiating.
Okay. My next couple of questions have to do with finances. And I don't know if that's one of your strengths, financials or not, but as a manager, I guess it all falls within your buck stops here. So in 2019, the Village of Biscayne Park's audited financial statements report a little over $1 million in unrestricted reserve funds. In this year, or in the next couple of months, we anticipate receiving from FEMA another $700,000, which would be finally our claims, IRMA claims being paid, reimbursed to us. So that first $1 million was achieved in part by putting off improvements, long delayed goals, things like storm drainage projects, things like installing a permanent generator at Village Hall, which is our public safety building, things like installing a parking surface at the rec center. My question, two questions related to that scenario is, what level of unrestricted reserve would you advise as comfortable for our municipality? And how do you balance maintaining that stable reserve fund with implementing these long-awaited projects?
Okay, so my first thing would have to be to meet with the finance director to be able to see how much. My goal is always to save as much as possible, however, still getting the services done. So there's multiple ways that we could get things done without going into our finances directly. I would have to see if there's any grants that would cover those services. Also, I take care of the legislative agenda for the city currently. So if any of those services that have been awaited for fall into any appropriations that we can have take to Tallahassee and get funding for, I'll go ahead and advocate for that as well. And I would like to really take a look at all the possible avenues where we can access funds without touching the reserve. So my first goal will be to save as much as possible and explore all the avenues before we go ahead and we spend.
Okay. Also on finances and being in Broward County, I don't know if you're familiar with the CITT, the Citizens Initiative Transportation Trust that we have in Dade County. It's a half-penny sales tax that's used for transit and transportation projects. And the village's share of that currently is somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000. It's a fund that's restricted for transit and transportation. We're currently in a situation of almost use or lose because we haven't implemented any projects with those funds. And of course, the county wants to have impact. They want to have services and structures and things done with that money so that they can show the improvement, right? What kind of strategies would you propose to maximize the use of that $400,000 to $600,000 for transit and transportation?
I would have to look at do you have some a document where the structure is in place of what would be allowed or disallowed, and then be able to assess the city and see where we can use those. I'm not sure if it could cover sidewalk or ADA to make the city ADA compliant and different things like that, where I'm sure that we can use those funds and have multiple projects that would show the county that we're using the funds to better the city.
Okay, thank you. My last question is, what do you hope to accomplish in the first 6 months of the job if you're offered the position?
I would love to accomplish, like I've said before, to have a realistic assessment of the city. I would like to learn from each and every one of you your goals and aspirations and what your accomplishments are, so that I can be a part of that to making it a reality. Also get to learn my staff, get to see what talents I have in-house and how we can utilize those talents for the betterment of the city. And the first 6 months is really a period where I need to learn, what I have, what the mayor and commission would want me to do, so that we can make a concrete plan, goals, milestones that we can achieve within that year.
Okay, thank you very much, Peggy.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Tudor, would you like to?
Yes, Mayor. First of all, thank you for being here tonight. Let me take this off so you can hear me a little bit better. There. Hopefully, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. I'll jump straight into it. I just have a few questions. The first is just more of an overall question. What do you believe are the greatest attributes that a successful manager must have?
I believe that a successful manager must understand the vision, mission of the village or of a city. Also, know how to bring in funds and how to safeguard the budget, making a positive impact each and every year, progress for the city. And that's the type of mentality that a manager should have.
Okay, thank you. And kind of touching on the concept of budgets and finances, my next question has to do with multi-year financial forecasts. We've never utilized a multi-year financial forecast. We typically, during the budget years, it's basically a year-to-year situation when we're looking at projects. What do you feel are the greatest benefits of creating and utilizing a multi-year financial forecast?
A multi-year financial forecast will let us, well, first we have to know what we want to do in those years. We have to plan for those years. It would give us a realistic outlook of what we want to get done. My favorite or the most beneficial financial forecast is, for me, is the zero-based budget. So to start every year at zero and be able to justify each expenditure from year to year is very safe, and I believe it's the most justifiable way that we can do the budget.
Okay, thank you for that. You know, this has to do more with you know, with a small community. It's there's a very close interaction between the manager and residents. And, you know, we all understand that community interactions are key for developing and maintaining the good relationships with residents. However, you know, we do have limited staff, and we do understand that there are business matters that must be addressed in a timely manner by staff and the manager. How would you manage these two expectations?
I manage those expectations now. For me, there is no office hours. There is no job description. Like I said, I've worn multiple hats for many years in the city. Even if it's a city of multiple, a lot of department heads and a lot of personnel, I am very engaged on the day-to-day operations. I am very excited and ready to just get things done every day. So you can find me at Public Works or at Parks and Recreations. I am the person that just wants to get things done. So I have no problems with that expectation.
Okay, thank you. Another topic with a lot of residents here in the village has to do with code compliance. You know, there's been some voices out there that have stated in the past that the village needs to basically hit the residents in the pocketbook in order to gain code compliance. Do you feel that this is an appropriate philosophy, or should the village work with residents to get those residents into compliance?
I believe education is key, making sure that the residents know what we expect from them or what the mayor and commission expects from them. Putting policy and procedures in place would be the second step, making sure that when those go into effect, there is a grace period where we are sure that they understand our expectations and what the consequences will be. Once the mayor and commissions put those policy and procedures in place, and we have properly educated our residents, then the final step would be to the fine.
Okay. And see, I just have one other question I want to ask you. This has to do specifically with the role of commissioners and the manager. Our charter is very clear on the role of commissioners and the manager. Specifically, individual commissioners are not allowed to direct the manager or staff to take any particular actions. That has to come from the entire commission as a body. However, over the years, there have been concerns raised by some that certain commissioners have crossed that line. With that said, as a manager, how would you address and mitigate this issue if you were confronted with that?
Okay, so just to make sure that I'm clear, if I was confronted by one commissioner about a certain action.
Yes, yeah, by this, yeah, an individual commissioner coming to you and saying, you know, directing you, I want you to do this, do that, or directing staff, you know, to take a particular action, which we're not allowed to do per our charter. As a manager, how would you address that?
I would definitely have a conversation with the commissioner, making sure that that they're reminded, and I am put in place also to keep them safe and to make sure that, you know, we don't get in trouble. If it's something that I feel that that it's a valid concern, then I believe we should talk about it in a workshop setting with all the commissioners involved, where they could be meaningful discussion, questions, the attorney could be present, and we could get a clear understanding of what the concern is.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that response. Mayor, I don't have any other questions. I just wanted to thank you once again for being here tonight and sharing some time with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tuda. Vice Mayor Kennedy, would you like to proceed?
Yes, thank you very much. Let me start my timer here. Trying to play by the rules here. Hold on. Okay, off we go. My name is Mac Kennedy, and I'd like you to call me Mac while we're talking here tonight. May I call you Peggy?
Definitely.
Okay, wanted to ask. I see that you're a yellow belt, so I better follow the rules here with you as well. Scared me a little bit when I saw that on your resume. So I'm assuming that's a martial arts designation of some kind?
No, it's a project.
Oh, what is that?
It's a belt.
Oh.
Yes. So that's a program where you get a yellow belt, green belt, black belt, depending on the project status that you have certified in.
Okay, well, impressive nonetheless. So let me jump into a couple of questions here. I only have a couple of minutes with you. Peggy, talk to me about your research for this position and for tonight's interview. How many meetings have you attended virtually or watched after the fact on YouTube? And from attending those meetings virtually, what stood out to you as the hot topics here in Biscayne Park?
The hot topic that I saw in Biscayne Park was how the managers have been selected in the past and the impact that they've had in the city. So I read a little bit about the, I believe it was Ana Garcia and the manager after that, and how they have impacted the city and how it was. So those were the meetings that I saw, what I read about the city.
Did you attend any of our meetings via YouTube Live?
I did. Well, not YouTube Live. Okay. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Zoom Live.
I went to I saw where the city clerk has the past commission meetings.
On video?
On video, yes.
So you did watch them, okay. So I'm assuming you watched some of our more recent meetings. Of the things that we've been discussing, what did you think were the most pressing matters before the commission right now?
Well, I was following the recruitment process.
Okay, so you were specifically following this hiring process for manager.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Discuss for me the difference between an organization, in this case the village, having a vision and an action plan. Discuss those two things and how they work together for me.
Okay, so the difference between the mission and the action plan?
Yes, please.
Okay, so a mission, I believe we all have, it has to be all hands on deck. So the mission is what we want to get accomplished. Where do we see ourselves in 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, making sure that we are all working for the same goal. And then the action plan is, how do we get there? How do we develop this mission and where we want to go? So those are the two differences within the mission and the action plan.
Great. And if you were our manager, what is your level of responsibility for those two things? The being involved in the vision, developing our vision, and the action plan to get us there.
The first thing we would have to do is develop that mission, vision, and goal for the village collectively, together as a group. Making sure that we are clear, transparent, and we all understand where we're headed. So it would be to develop a strategic plan. It would be up to the mayor and commission if you want to do a 24-month plan, a 4-year. We've done up to a 5-year plan and we touch all areas. You know, it would be code compliance and what we need to do, public works, even the manager's office. We will touch all areas collectively. And then we would all develop the action plan. Once we develop the action plan, we have to make sure that we put efficiencies and a way to hold accountabilities, milestones, and all that are trackable and are clear and transparent.
Very good. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you for that. So let's talk about communications. It's something that's quite important to me, and I think our village has not, we've not been great at communicating from the manager to the commission, from the village to residents. And this is not a criticism of Roseanne, our current interim manager. This is a situation she handled, and she's wearing lots of hats these days. But in the past, when we've had a full-time manager, we've not been great about that. Discuss with me what your role would be in communicating to, as a manager, communicating to the commission and to residents, and describe what you think the ideal comprehensive communications plan might include, what elements it might include.
My priority would be for everyone to be on the same page at the same time, to be as transparent as possible. It would be my goal, my ultimate goal. It would be, I would serve as a gatekeeper from the buffer from each commissioner. And I would have an open door at all times, at any times. But we would also decide what we are going to put out to the residents. Valuable information, constructing information, and information that will help everyone be on the same page ultimately. We could use different platforms. We can develop social media platforms. We can have, OnSolve is very good as well, where at a text message, everybody knows if a hurricane is coming, if we need to handle anything that way as well. And just YouTube and things like that, just communication all the way around.
Okay, very good. Last question, and this is kind of a meaty one, so you're probably going to run out the clock here for me. In an interview, we tend to focus on achievements. So you're telling us some very relevant experience that you have and some things that you've done well at other jobs that would benefit us as a community. And that's really what we want to hear from you. But I also find that myself, and when I interview other people, that you can look back on things that you were not successful at doing and think of what you learned from those, we'll call them failures. So, you know, we all do some things really well, and sometimes we fall short, but we learn, and what we learn is valuable to us as we move forward trying to accomplish some things. I'd like you to think back in your jobs at something that you tried really hard to get done, that you didn't get done, and what you learned from it that you still remember and carry with you as you work on other projects.
One of the I say it was a crash course. It was, I mean, to this day, I still think about it. Was when I first started municipal government. I started in the community development area, and I did not have the experience of grant writing. Our grant writer at the moment decided that she was only going to do 3 grants. And we had, only in community development, we had 4 grants to go for. Deadline was very close. I am new, I'm just coming out from criminal justice field, probation and parole and all that, into municipal government. So I put all these barriers on me because I worked with amazing talent. I worked with great department heads, which today are city managers, and different people. And I told myself I was not qualified to write these 3 grants that we had. My then department director, he's been a wealth of knowledge in my life. He pushed me enough to make me commit to write 1 grant. And it took me so long to write this grant. And I remember the deadline was the next day, 12 p.m. And I still have a picture, a memory on Facebook that I took a picture 2 a.m. in the morning, me writing this grant and then making the copies. It was 500 pages, 50 books, and I was in the office until 3 o'clock in the morning until everything was ready to go out the next day. I only wrote one of the grants. That grant got awarded. One of the grant that the grant writer wrote did not get awarded. So I always kicked myself about not putting all these walls up and being afraid or doubting myself where I did not write all 3 grants. I just wrote one. And that's a lesson that after that happened, I knew that sky was the limit. I was not afraid and I was a go-getter and I could get things done. So it really, really taught me a lesson.
So you learn not to sell yourself short.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's a great lesson to learn. Okay, that was perfect. The timer's going off. I don't know how to turn it off now, but there we go. Thank you very much for your time, Peggy. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Kennedy. Commissioner Samaria.
Good evening, Ms. Peggy. I can call you Peggy, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Since you said you overseen public work, what exactly did you do?
Well, I work together with Public Works day-to-day operations. We also are working on the canals. We have a project going on at the moment, getting the canal banks stabilized. City of Lauderdale Lakes is only 4 miles, but we have 21 miles of canals. And some of our residents are losing up to 4 feet of land in the back of their yards. So we are working on the canal bank stabilization project, which also I've got 1.5 million from Tallahassee in the appropriations request to fund that project. It's much more than what we've had, but it has really helped. We've also done the design of the city's irrigation system and much more, just a little bit of everything.
What attracted you to Biscayne Park, and why do you think you would be a great village manager?
I would be very excited to apply my skill sets to Biscayne Park Village. I was attracted to it because it's in Dade County. I'm originally from Dade County. It's a smaller city, and I think that we can get a lot accomplished. I read in my research for this position, I read a statement saying that there was no clear plan for the city for many years. I would love to be part of planning the next couple of years with this with the mayor and commission and having great outcomes.
We do have a lot of employees, but that means it's more important to hire the right people. How much experience have you had with Public Works Department at this time? We need a Public Works manager.
How much experience?
Okay, let me repeat again. We do not have a lot of employees, but that means it's more important to hire the right people. How much experience have you had with Public Works Department? At this time, we need a Public Works manager.
Like I said, right at the moment, I am over Public Works, and I have had years of experience with Public Works. And I do believe that you have to hire someone that's talented, passionate, and takes ownership for their department. That's a very important department. That's, you know, what the people see on the outside. So we have to make sure that we hire somebody that is proud and has ownership for their department.
Biscayne Park is a small community, and sometimes it's like dealing with the big family that does not always get along. What strategies would you use to bring the administration, commission, and residents together so we can accomplish goals?
In the administrative part and the mayor and commission part, I believe that if we all work towards the same goal, we all communicate and we focus on progress, on outcomes, I believe we will be on one accord. Having that will be a benefit for our residents because they will be able to see how we work united, how we are all working for one goal, and we would make progress that would benefit them.
even though we have department heads, what do you think your level of involvement should be with all departments? For example, police, public works, and code. How would you describe your method of management? Do you believe in micromanaging approach, or let department heads do the job that they were hired for?
I believe if we're confident that we have talented department directors, they are in control of the departments, and the job needs to get done. If the job doesn't get done, the department head will be accountable. So making sure that I am available to guide them, to encourage them and empower them, to give them ideas, pull up my sleeves and work with them if I have to. But ultimately, that department director should be held accountable to make sure that their department is running as smoothly as possible.
What do you think Biscayne Park's biggest assets are, and what are some of the areas that need improvement?
The biggest assets would be that it's a small city and a lot can be done. A lot of progress can be made. I see it as it could be a gem, you know, if we make sure that we get everything like code compliance. I would love to hear what the residents' concerns are, what the mayor and commissioners' goals are for code compliance, making sure that we iron out those kinks and make it shine like it should shine. It's a small city, so it should, you know, with everything in place, it should work very smoothly. We just have to put the work in.
This is my last question. I think you answered part of this, but I want you to go more in depth. Have you had any experience in writing RFP, contract negotiation, and writing grants? I think you said you wrote some grants. Could you go more into details about that?
I wrote grants, like I said, since I practically walked in the door in municipal government. And I have wrote quite a few after that. At one point in Lauderdale Lake, before I had the position that I have now, I was the grants compliance officer. So not only was I writing the grants, I was keeping them compliant, because that's a very important part of grants as well. When I got that position, we were about to lose $378,000 of our water, of a water grant, because we didn't have the right processes in place of how to keep the measures of what was being spent, what was allowed, what was disallowed, and things like that. So I had to make sure that I put all those in place and maintain compliance so that we could keep the funds and be reimbursed for funds that we had already spent. So fortunately, since I've been put in different locations at the right time to help, I have a lot of experience with grant writing and grant compliance. I also run the legislative agenda. That's another part of grants. So I work with the department heads each year before session starts in Tallahassee and in Washington to develop these appropriation projects for the city. We put a number to it, what we think it's going to cost. We also put a matching cost to it. And I go to Tallahassee and Washington, D.C. and advocate for the city each year. So I have experience on that aspect. And in RFPs and bids, I work very closely. I don't write them, but I work very closely with our finance budget person for CIP. So I've had RFPs for CIP projects, for our sidewalk project, for our canal projects, for our irrigators throughout the city. So I do have experience in those areas.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are you familiar at all with the FAA changing their flight patterns?
I'm sorry?
Are you familiar at all with the FAA changing their flight patterns over Biscayne Park and a lot of our cities
No,
around?
no, ma'am, unfortunately not.
Okay. If you get hired, you'll have to find out about those things.
Definitely.
Okay, okay, Vice Mayor Kennedy, would you like to end this?
With your project?
So Peggy, we would like to, as a follow-up, we'd like to give you an assignment as a follow-up to this first interview. Tomorrow, before you have the benefit of watching the video of this meeting that will be posted on YouTube, we would like you to send us a recap of this interview. We'd like you to list what we discussed, any topics that were left unanswered, and to also give you an opportunity to add to anything that you would like to have included that you didn't think of at the time in your choice of format and content. If we gave you 24 hours from now to get that to Roseanne, would you be able to do that for us?
Absolutely.
Okay, so within 24 hours, and again, it's you decide what goes in it, you decide the format, how you want to present it to us, but just a nice recap of everything that we discussed here tonight, and be sure to include anything else you want to add. Get that to Roseanne, she'll forward it to the commission, and she'll make it public, she'll make it available for the public to request as well.
Okay, definitely.
We appreciate that, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any follow-up questions that anybody has? Okay, thank you, Peggy.
Thank you, Ms. Peggy.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion for an adjournment until tomorrow night, 7
Right.
o'clock.
Is there something that we're supposed to talk about in reference to, into Friday, or we could do that tomorrow? So we are meeting on Friday, yeah. So,
We're on for Friday if Commissioner Tudor
right.
can make Friday.
Yes.
He will tell us tomorrow,
Yeah, I'll know
Okay.
tomorrow.
okay?
Okay, thank you.
Very good.
I'll
I'll make a motion to,
Can we talk about that for 1 second, please?
yes, go ahead.
Because if we are interviewing people tomorrow, and it's going to go until 9:30, and we're going to give them 24 hours to get back that summary to us. Now we are Friday, it's Friday 9:30 when that summary is going to come in. Do we need to have that before we talk about next steps? Maybe we should do it on Monday instead?
You know, don't we have that meeting on Tuesday on the variance?
No, that's the 10th of November. Oh, yeah.
That's Tuesday, yeah, that's
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
yes.
It's
Oh,
Tuesday,
sheesh.
right?
Well, if we ask
Maybe we
tomorrow's
could meet a half
applicant-
hour, maybe we could come in a half hour early on Tuesday.
Well, here's what I'm thinking, guys. This is why I wanted to do it on Friday. Am I unmuted? I'm sorry, am I talking to myself?
No,
No,
Okay.
no, they're not.
The reason I wanted to do it Friday is because we haven't decided what the next steps are going to be. I kind of doubt that we're just going to agree on someone and hire them. And I was thinking we would probably want to set up a second interview for one or the two of these candidates. Again, this is a major hire that we're making, and I would like to see them again. And we would be able to, if we talk on Friday, we would be able to schedule that for next week, like ASAP, and get this thing moving along faster. If we wait until Tuesday, then it gets pushed back that many more days. That was my interest in having it on Friday. I said to the folks tonight, I'll give you 24 hours to get the assignment done. Tomorrow we could say, can you get it to us by 5? These people all want the job. They're going to get it to us when we ask them to get it to us. So I'd rather keep it Friday. If you guys decide you want to stack it up on Tuesday with the other meeting, I can live with that too.
Okay, we'll check and see tomorrow if we can do it.
So we'd have to notice tomorrow, we'd have to notice the meeting for Friday. And then we can always cancel it if we decide not to.
That's
right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Is everybody in favor of adjournment?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me just clarify that because so for now we're keeping it Friday at 6:30. Tomorrow Will will tell us if it's 6:30 or 7 or not at all.
Yes.
Is that correct, Will?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we'll figure that out tomorrow. Okay, awesome.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
We need a motion. We need
Okay,
a motion
good night.
to
We did.
adjourn.
Oh, we did make a
To
motion.
adjourn, Ginny.
We need, Commissioner Samaria made the motion.
Okay.
Second it.
All right.
And Vice Mayor Kennedy seconded it. And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Have a good night.
Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow night.